those higher level, higher forms of transit into the downtown area. We have a lot of transit service that connects into downtown, a lot of transit lines as well as freight rail lines sort of converging. So how can we make use of that? And that was really part of this whole challenge. So contrary to what we've done in the past, which is sort of develop a huge long-range plan that had a lot of rail lines and transit lines everywhere, we're really starting from the downtown core and trying to build outwards from that. We're trying to regionalize, if you will, the existing transit assets that we have downtown, and that's important because in order to secure state funding, which we hope to later on, it has to be serve a regional purpose. We're trying to leverage what rail infrastructure we have, and we do have some rail infrastructure, notably the streetcar line that you all are managing, as well as some underutilized and less utilized freight rail lines. So we want to see if we can make use of those. We're trying to find some lower cost options. Hearing what folks have told us in some of our focus groups, as well as public opinion surveying, we have to be good stewards and try to find the best uses, or make the best use of the dollars that we have available to us. Ultimately, what we hope to come up with is a project or a set of projects that would find their way into the 2040 long-range transportation plan, as well as HART's shorter-range transit development plan. Maximizing use of transit assets, I just told you a little bit about that. Trying to seek out and expand to unserved or maybe less served transit markets is another objective of ours. We want to try to identify some opportunities where we might be able to integrate the bus and rail systems better, make flexible use of some of those rail lines, including the freight rail if that's possible. Create some revenue opportunities, perhaps some joint or development or public-private partnerships. See what we can do about streetcar liability, and basically encourage redevelopment and transit-oriented development where that's possible. There are a lot of things happening downtown in terms of emerging development. These are just a few notable examples. The one in the upper left-hand corner is a footprint of the downtown intermodal center. That's a piece of property that the state acquired. Originally, it was intended for to be the place where the high-speed rail system would serve downtown. So its use is a little bit up in the air, and we want to see if we can connect to it. There's a lot happening both in the immediately north of the downtown area with the Encore development. The Channel District is growing by leaps and bounds, and we're even seeing some efforts to redevelop on the west bank of the river. So these are all sort of important areas to consider and see if we can get premium transit to serve. Now, when we're talking about that, what modes of premium transit are we considering? Light rail, of course, has always been on the table. What may be new or a little bit different is a modern streetcar, or as we like to call it, a tram. It's basically a lighter version of a rail vehicle, a little bit easier to get around corners, also a little bit easier to power. It doesn't require as much, because it's lighter weight, it doesn't require as much in terms of power infrastructure, and therefore it's a little less expensive. Diesel multiple units. These are self-propelled diesel-powered rail cars that don't require any overhead electrification, so there's a savings there. They also have the advantage that at least some models, the ones that are shown here, are certified or approved by the federal government for operating within freight rail lines. And of course, there are the rubber-wheeled options, standard city buses, trolley-like vehicles, some of which we have already running downtown, the in-town trolley, and even sort of open air variants. So I'm going to, because of your time limitations, I'm going to just cut to the recommendations. These are some of the options going west, and I should preface all of this by saying that what we're ending up with are some lines on a map that are going to warrant a lot more study. And so what we're proposing is to lay the groundwork for a more concentrated planning, design, and engineering. These are options going west from downtown. You can see they tie into the existing streetcar line, find their way up Marion Transitway to the Marion Transit Center and that intermodal station site, work their way across westward, across the Laurel Street vicinity. There's some options here once you get across the river to either stay within the interstate right-of-way, and there is a 48-foot corridor in the middle of the expanded I-275 right-of-way that we feel is important to sort of lay claim to. So that's shown all the way out to West Shore. There are a couple of variants or options, one going north on Main Street and the other on Cypress. But eventually they intersect with 275 going westward in the median all the way out to the West Shore area where it would serve the proposed site of the West Shore Intermodal Center. We're talking about fairly frequent service, 15 minutes during the peak, 30 minutes off peak, 18 and a half hours a day during the week, and maybe 14 hours Saturday and Sunday. Two different modes are under consideration here. One is light rail, and you can see the capital costs there, as well as the operating costs. The other is a modern tram, a streetcar, a little less expensive. Well, not a little less expensive, it is less expensive. Both in terms of capital and operating costs. We've cited an additional cost there in the Laurel Street Bridge. It now will either have to be rebuilt or replaced in order to accommodate some form of rail envelope. So what do you get for this? You get a one-seat ride from the convention center to cruise terminals all the way out to West Shore. Multimodal center and potential connections with the airport people mover extension that would serve that intermodal center. Potentially in the 12-15 minute travel time range. So that's what we see as a real plus for these sets of alternatives. Options going north to the USF area. There are two lines on the map here, one which would make use of the existing CSX freight rail line all the way up to Fowler, just south of Fowler, and then over to 30th Street. It would come down through Ybor on the Palm and Lucille Parkway and wind up in the vicinity of the downtown intermodal center. We don't know if that corridor is going to be available, frankly. That's something that's going to be up to the state and CSX to negotiate. So we're showing an alternative that perhaps use either light rail or the modern tram, running up Florida Avenue and essentially beginning and ending at the same places. Again, the same type of frequency and hours of service as what was proposed in the West Corridor. The capital costs are shown here, both for the DMU, which would be the blue line, as well as the modern tram, which is the red line. The big plus for this alternative is that the passenger service on the existing rail line, the CSX line, using DMU is potentially only a half to a third of the cost of previous light rail proposals from downtown to USF. Important to mention the freight rail assumptions, and that's what they are, assumptions. We have not negotiated anything with CSX as the owner of the freight rail corridor, but we do have some real-world examples from over in the Orlando area. The portions that are shown, sort of highlighted in yellow on the map there, are what would be needed for the corridors that I just showed you. And if we took the same cost range that was negotiated in the Orlando Sunrail example and applied that here, you can see a potential acquisition cost based on that example. There are some shorter range rubber wheel options to serve and connect through and to downtown core. The blue line that's shown is the existing in-town trolley that runs north-south, basically 5 hours a day, 5 days a week. We think it's important to bring that up to a more rounded and robust level of service, operating on a 10-minute schedule, perhaps 15 hours a day during the week, and 11 hours on Sundays. But we think it's also important maybe to complement that with an east-west route, and that's what's shown in red, basically tying from the streetcar line in the Channel District westward over to the river, sort of serving the core of the downtown office center. The green line is a potential extension across the river on Kennedy to pick up a potential market with the University of Tampa students and folks in that vicinity, and maybe going all the way out to the Walmart supermarket on the west end there. Costs for this are shown here. We've broken it down into 3 phases according to the 3 colors there. The first would be upgrading the in-town trolley to the hours and frequency that are shown. The second would be the east-west circulator in red, and the third is the West University of Tampa option in green. Putting this into sort of a larger regional context, we see some benefits in terms of building on current assets. We're making use of the existing streetcar alignment. We're connecting over to West Shore and tying into the potential automated people mover that will run from the terminal and the Conrack Center to the West Shore Intermodal Center. That's shown in the yellow dash line there. We're making use of the I-275 transit envelope that I mentioned. And we're making use of the Marion Street Transitway, which is an all transit corridor at this point. Future connections could go over the bay towards Pinellas on the Howard Franklin Bridge. We know DOT is preparing for that eventuality. Extending northward along the CSX corridor all the way up to the Pasco and serving that huge commuter market, as well as even further north into Hernando and serving Brooksville, as well as potentially going westward along the Clearwater subdivision line that runs, the CSX line that runs basically along Linebow out towards West Chase and Pinellas. We're showing also the potential for service coming in from Orlando using the I-4 corridor. That could be either Sunrail or perhaps the Old Board Florida as 2 pertinent examples. Again, they're all converging on downtown, and if they do come to Tampa, people will need a way to circulate through the local area. So that's basically it in a nutshell, and if there's questions, try and answer them.
Thank you very much, Rich. Bob, did you have a question?
I do. Have you heard any recent polling numbers for Pinellas County, what they're getting ready to put that on the ballot?
The last I heard was that it was, yes, there was some recent polling. I don't know whose auspices, but it looked like it was polling favorably by a slight margin.
Bob, I don't know if you were at the Downtown Partnership meeting a couple of weeks ago, but when they came and spoke, the green light people, they said that their polling, which they were confident about, had been in the very high 50s, almost low 60s, and that they had further begun to isolate the voting slices they needed to do more work on. So they sounded pretty confident.
They have very specific demographics that they had to, I think it's women,
60-year-old Republican.
and like red shoes or
It's
something.
something.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting.
He said we need about 2% more of 60-year-old plus Republican women and we'll win. And everybody said, good luck.
After that, I'm not sure I could.
Question about the types of modes. You call them tram, but it's really modern streetcar is what they call them too, right? Right. And typically those are the ones that are lower to the ground that are easier to get on and off. But in terms of speeds, they're about the same as the light rail, correct?
That's right.
Yeah, because they're both made to go into traffic and everything else.
Correct, yeah. I mean, under the right circumstances, they can get up to 40, 45, even 50 miles an hour.
Is there, what I have been hearing is that, one of the reasons that if we needed to change anything here, we'd have to meet certain standards, federal standards now for rail, meaning, it would have to be modern streetcar and not what we're running now, if I understand correctly, or something like that.
The standards that the feds.
And I don't know if it's a
They're not
mechanical
going to
standard or if it's a standard because of where they want to invest their money.
Right.
I'm not sure how,
Right.
the reasoning is.
I think the only standard that really matters is if you're going to be sharing the same corridor or line as a freight rail system, then you have to have, cars that are certified by the Federal Rail Administration as being crash worthy.
And those are the DMUs
Yeah.
primarily because they're
Only, really.
only, right. And then it's the same gauge of track, I assume, or you can make it for that type of gauge.
They're certified to be crash worthy. In other words, they won't let a passenger car, even in the same corridor as freight, if it can't take a hit from freight. And that's the theory.
Okay.
So they either run time separated or they run on parallel tracks that are close.
Got it. Okay. Thanks.
I had I wanted to mention, or ask you, I guess, that the study's basically done, it has been done. It's kind of sitting on the desk of the transportation leadership group. Are you looking for endorsement from that group? And maybe Mr. Suarez,
I talked too much about the
well, I know you have. I'm assuming that there's going to be some kind of interaction between the leadership group and the study. And before you answer that, the strategy here is that at present, we don't even have a rail plan in our long-range transportation plan, which is about to be updated. So it's important that we have something in the plan for legal purposes if in the near future we intend to pursue.
You're correct. The long-range transportation plan, for 2040, so most people can't imagine what's going to happen next week, never mind in 2040, but it really does signify, especially to our federal and state partners, what our intentions are for the future. So, what's in that plan, what lines up in that plan will make a difference. As to the policy leadership group, we have been in discussions with the staff, and I believe there will be a discussion or some sort of presentation about the long-range plan and what it might consist of at their next meeting, which I think is sometime in the middle of August. And they're well aware of this study, so I'm sure it'll be part of the discussion.
Anybody else have any questions? Rich, thank you so much for coming out.
Thanks. Thank you.
We have some discussion items that we wanted to have Catherine talk to us about, so I'm going to send those to
Well, I think you actually going to volunteer Jeff to talk a little bit about where we are with the fiscal 15 budget right now, to give us a little.
Good afternoon, Jeff Stewart, Chief Financial Officer for HART. Where we left off in June was the commitment of HART staff to set up a meeting with financial staff from the City of Tampa to discuss the $148,000 deficit, have a discussion concerning plugging that gap, and then being able to come back to you at the August THS meeting with a definitive budget, either addressing it, i.e. filling it, or the subsequent necessary changes to service. So what was communicated to the City of Tampa, Ms. Little, during that meeting, was the fact that we have a $148,000 funding gap, a shortfall which equates to about 1,200 hours of service. And based on discussions with Ms. Egan and HART staff, the way that we would deal with that deficit, if indeed we were to reduce service, would be changing service 2 days a week, starting our operations at 5 o'clock, running into 10 o'clock p.m., running 3 cars with the current 20-minute frequencies. So those days could be alternated, etc., but that would be the service reduction that would be necessary to mitigate that $148,000 shortfall. The only update I have for you today is I have been in communication with Ms. Little yesterday afternoon and this morning, and the update was there is no update currently. She will get back to me once the mayor proposes his budget, I believe on the 24th.
To be a little broader than that, the proposed budget has $148,000 in it to plug the gap that would be paid for by the city of Tampa. But I'm not sure that Ms. Little didn't want to make any promises because it's not an approved budget. And the fact that one of the board members here will be voting on it, hopefully. That's a good again, you know, it's a proposed budget. It is not an approved budget.
Sure.
That's money from the city of Tampa. It's a proposed budget.
Great. Can I, well, we're going to talk about CRAs, but there's been no particular decision made, to my knowledge, about what the CRAs are going to do this year.
If I may, hold on.
Please.
I had a conversation earlier today with one of the proposers for the Channel Side Shopping Center. And, excuse me. And I again pointed out to them how important the streetcar is to their success. And I'm assuming that at the end of this week, hopefully the federal bankers will make a decision. And I told them that it would be important that we go hand in hand with Port Authority to make sure that there is funding for the streetcar as part of this redevelopment of the Channel Side Mall. And Ms. Egan had gone and spoken to the various CRAs to kind of give an idea of how much more money would have to be done. But I thought it was perhaps prudent if, in the short term, there is a solution to the ownership of the mall, that gets plugged in there, because there's a financial consideration and also service consideration, because they're going to want certain hours. So before we went back to the CRAs and asked specific funding assistance, I wanted to know exactly how much that would be, because we might get some money. And also have a dialogue about hours of operation that would impact what kind of dollars we would ask.
Sure.
So
that's ongoing?
yes, that's correct. In general, and again, there is the CRA board. Ms. Egan has been meeting with our advisory boards, which are advisory solely. The CRA board is the city council who sits and votes on this.
Boy, I'm glad I came to this meeting.
Was I kicking your foot?
Yeah, you kicked my foot now. Runs my toe, for God's sake.
In general, I can say that the advisory board is a supporter, but again, I would feel more comfortable if we went back to them with a complete story And if indeed we have a solution to the ownership at the end of this week, because this is ongoing in Delaware courts right now, we should be able to flush out something in the near term. My solution, short term, would be for us to adopt the budget that we were going to, and then go out and seek the extra funding and work with the schedule. That would be work for all the parties, and then talk to the various CRAs, who would then go and modify their budgets, and go back to city council where it has the CRA board to approve such an action.
Sounds like a good plan.
If I could, about your opinion concerning the development, okay? Can we put in a contract, the port put in a contract that they would have to put in a certain amount of money? If I'm a developer and I go, hey, you know what? I think the streetcar is a great thing for us as a multi-use facility. I'd like for you all to put in X number of dollars and the developer can put in X number of dollars. Is there a way to enforce that or put that in there? I know that it may be a little bit more unusual because most of the time, development agreements deal specifically with incentives in terms of how you develop the property as opposed to.
There are monetary considerations all the time,
But they do it primarily because of, I'm getting something while I'm giving something up. And, I mean, is that something that can be worked out?
There are pledges to invest a certain amount of money in improvements on an annual basis. There was actually in ground lease with the developer that the developer would pay a certain amount of money annually for rights to park, in which case the board would give them discounted parking. Central Leaport has a similar
Right.
codicil in their lease. So things like that can certainly be discussed. Now, whether or not the board would be willing, because this is probably a 20-year lease, whether or not the board is willing to enter into a 20-year agreement with a stipulated annual stipend in that thing is something, again, because the traditional port interests would prefer to see the money spent on traditional port activities, which is where the rub has been.
Is it possible for us, and just want your opinion based on development agreements, things like that, do you think it would be useful for us to write a letter as a board to support some type of agreement between the port and the new lessee of the port property to include that as part of that lease?
Well, it's interesting you say that because the EBOR CRA sent a letter yesterday to the port board, again, saying, mentioning Channel Side and the
Well, and I think that, maybe this is a
Perhaps-
distinction without a difference, which is that instead of us asking hat in hand to the port, we want some money, is there a way that we can get to the developer, to the new, lessee of the property to say, hey, we want this because it makes our property more valuable and a better,
Do you think that perhaps by no way I called them?
and could be.
That was the rationale that I used as well.
Okay, good. See, that's what I thought, I knew we were on the right side.
They're woman friendly right now. So,
Yeah.
yes, that was the intent.
Okay. And where's that in court? What's going to happen with Liberty and some of the other stuff?
Don't know yet. It's in front of the bankruptcy court. They had testimony all day yesterday till 5 o'clock. I don't believe there's anything going on today, and the court is scheduled to convene again tomorrow morning, and I think hear testimony Thursday and Friday.
Is your sense that if they don't get the judge to agree that they were unfairly shut out, the Liberty Group, that they will sue regardless, or?
Well, the Liberty Group.
I'm not asking you what you think Liberty's going to do, but.
Yeah, well, they've said publicly that
Mhm.
they would intend to do that. But again, the port has sovereign immunity. And so even if they're claiming tortious interference, I'm not quite sure what the limits of their liability would be. It's a really complicated, ugly deal, which has hurt the neighborhood more than anybody else, which is really, it's taken something which could be really good.
This is a price that has gone up as successfully as it has, considering how much in disrepair that place has become. So, anyway, thanks. I apologize.
No, thank you both.
So that, I have kind of a plan, and that's what I'm trying to do.
Great. Excellent. Thank you so much. Thank you, Jeff. Ms. Egan?
I just wanted to say I think Bob has quite the plan
hear about it coming forward and reiterate that both the downtown CRAs and the Channel District CRA advisories were in large support of helping the streetcar facilitating whatever they can, or whatever they can.
I think we got,
Right,
we're
right.
scheduled to go pitch or talk to the SCDC next week.
I would suggest, put it off.
Sure.
Just let them go with their standard level of support. And then when we have some more information about Townside Mall and if and what kinds of money we're going to get from them, we'll come back with it. Because again, part of the plan that Ms. Egan had was dependent on hours of operation and frequency. And so if we have someone else involved in it, I'd like to get their feedback. So then the plan as we move forward is reflective of that.
Okay, let me ask you, the only reason we scheduled the meeting for this month was because their meeting happens later in the month, and we will already have appeared at the city council in August for the special assessment, and we talked about the CRAs incidentally before the next YCDC meeting. So if we don't go see them this month, then we won't see them until after the special assessment is.
I will-
If that's okay, that's fine.
Their preliminary budget has the same level of support that they did last year. 138,000 from one of the YCDC 2 and 18,000 from YCDC 1.
Sure. So you would suggest we just wait till?
No, because I think that it would, when we have a plan and have firm numbers,
It's a much better.
then the CRAs, the 3 CRAs can figure out what they can pay and go back to the CRA board with their recommendations on changing their next year's budget to reflect it.
And I will ask Ms. Egan to schedule a meeting.
Please.
Well, I will be at the meeting regardless, because I'm part of the YCDC, and I can give an overview of information, but I won't do the pitch for any additional funds or anything like that. Just talk about what's in the bylaw.
That would be great, I would appreciate that.
Well, in the case of the YCDC, which has the least amount of discretionary funds of the 3 CRAs, I think that the news of extra contribution coming from somewhere else will help open top this smoother than Bahama.
Right.
That sounds like good logic.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Mr. for the updates of this plan that I have actually been staff put together is in this presentation. So
I'll turn my microphone on. The presentation has covered an overview of what the current schedule is and what that means for the operating budget today. Compares us to the peak schedule, which we had back in 2006, and then goes beyond that to say, what would an optimal schedule look like for Streetcar? The board had asked staff to look into that. So we'll go through that quickly. Right now, we are just shy of $1.6 million in operations. So we've got our service again noon through 10 every 20 minutes. We are pretty much 20 minutes all the time that we operate until after midnight, where we have a half-hourly service on Friday and Saturday, and we have an 8-hour footprint on Sunday. To quote a marketing professional that I know, we have a lot of great ideas to promote, but we do not feel that we have a very strong product. So we can hype the heck out of this schedule, but until it's a more robust schedule, it's going to be tricky to convince people to come ride it, to take 20 minutes of their life and invest. So what was our most robust schedule that we had at some point in the past? Well, 8 years ago, we had about 50% more service. So we're running about 12,000 hours now. This is an 18,000 hour schedule. There were a lot of times in the schedule where there was 4 cars, a pretty big span on several days, and a wider window. So for an additional $750,000, this is the schedule which we were running 8 years ago. So that brings the net on that price tag to just over $2.4 million. Remember, this is the operating only, so this separate information that Lee talks about with the advertising budget, et cetera, that's separate.
That's why it's up to a number of 300,000 or 400,000.
Yes, that's why the number. The enhanced schedule.
Catherine,
Yes, sir.
let me ask you, what cost was it to, as an individual rider, would cost to ride that? Wasn't it cheaper than?
It was cheaper, so the fares,
I mean, $1.50?
we'd have to go back and get the fares schedule for you. Fares have been consistently about 30% of the budget, so we'll get the fares schedule. We'll get that for you, and we can see what the revenue was like at that time. But to put to your question, Councilman, the prices we're giving are gross figures for running it. They are not saying it's this backed out for fare recovery. So this
Yeah,
is
go back to
gross.
that carry just a second. Yeah, that's, I thought we didn't stop at 8:20 PM on the station, ever.
It is starting. It was, if we stopped at 8 PM or we stopped at 8:30, the last car's pulling out of the end of the line at 8, we'll tell folks it's 8.
But we never stopped there.
Let me double check.
Yeah,
on that.
it doesn't matter, but the real point is that, and I think it was probably either 10 or 11, even on those
That makes
days.
sense because otherwise it's a really, the difference between this and the next schedule is,
It's huge.
the price tag is not. So we'll double check.
So this was the best we ever did with the best techniques. And it took 4 cars and a lot more staff. And we spent a lot more money on marketing than we did.
And thank you for that, because in the past 8 years, we've made HART has absorbed different costs. We've moved things around. For instance, in the fiscal 15 budget, Pete Nikos is completely on the HART payroll, though he still acts as the manager for personnel on Streetcar. He assists with HART projects as well. Right now it's 50-50, but that is, his salary plus his benefits fully loaded is in the HART budget. At this time, he was fully in the budget. At this time, you had more motormen. At this time, you had more maintenance personnel. And at this time, you also had an admin asset that was 100% in the budget. So some of the reasons the costs are lower, the next slide will show you, here's a really big schedule, but not the biggest price jump, is HART has made the service cheaper for the years. So this is a schedule which we had taken out of the CRAs, and the question from the Streetcar Board was, if you could come up with a schedule, what would you present out there for commuters and be reliable enough for folks to have service? This is a very expensive schedule, and let's caveat, we have not done a planning study on this or a fare recovery study at all. If the board were to recommend us go with a robust schedule like this, we would responsibly retain a consultant to come back and do the math and say, hey, this is a great idea. You will get this return on investment, or you won't. You bring that back to the Streetcar Board for your approval. So this is a dream over dream schedule, but we need to do the scrub to see what's the return on investment and what kind of ridership we'd actually get. We hear a lot of folks want this as a commuting service, so we'd recommend a trip at 6:30 to get folks to or from downtown. Then a 10-minute frequency for the morning rush hour at 7 to 9 a.m. and then 4 to 6 p.m. and a 15-minute base frequency in the middle of the day. We recommend after 6 p.m. from 6 to 10 go back to 15-minute frequency. Comparison is the service we're running now essentially covers the hours that are between 9 and 4 on the weekdays. So you have quite a bit more that we're putting out there. Friday schedule, the same thing, starting at 6 in the morning, 15-minute combo, but then as we do now, start from 10 until midnight. We run every 20 minutes and midnight to 2. Actually, this was saying 15 minutes from 6 to midnight, but midnight to 2 every 30 minutes. Saturday would be 15 minutes. We have priced this out at 15 minutes all the way till 2 a.m. Realistically, we expect a study to come back and say go half hourly, but we wanted to price out an optimal service level. And on Sunday, we priced out 12 hours of service at 15 minutes all day. And again, this is just what a great schedule would look like. The price tag for the great schedule comes out to $2.8 million. So again, 1.55 right now. The 2006 service levels and the prices we put together there is about 2.4, between 2.3 and 2.4. And Dream a Little Dream is 2.8, or $1.2 million more. And again, let's stress that's $1.2 million more just for service. HART has 4 people in marketing. We can't even handle the marketing work we need to do. There is clearly not the asset in place to do marketing for THS. If you go to this expansive schedule, you now have something to market. We would recommend you get a marketing consultant to do a real marketing plan and look at having the staff that can get out there, do the new website, do the things that we talked about in the previous meeting that there's just not staff to handle. We also talked about getting some more planning support to analyze what looks good on the schedule and what doesn't. So we're giving you price tags for service, but there's still some admin support that we would recommend looking at. So modern streetcars were talked about extensively in the previous meeting. We would also recommend looking at replacing the fleet, not that we don't love the historic trolleys, we really do, but we can accommodate more folks with these. These can go faster, these are more maneuverable, these don't have asbestos, these have air conditioning that would do more than get you 15 degrees cooler than outside. There are a lot of benefits to this. If you expand the service or you build up frequency, we would be challenged finding more vintage streetcars to complete out the fleet with a fully vintage streetcar line. The catenary that we have is pole specific, so we have to do a hard pull over back and forth. And the streetcars come out with sort of a twitching back and forth catenary. It would be difficult to integrate the vintage fleet in with the new catenary, but we can look at ways that we can do that. Again, the recommendation from a planning perspective would be to look to completely replace the fleet with a modern streetcar. We do have a federal interest in the vintage streetcars, but if you can find a federal grantee willing to accept the vintage streetcars, you are off the hook for that. And again, even though they are the best air conditioning, they are air conditioned, they're in good shape, and there are a lot of places looking for vintage streetcars. A modern streetcar is $4.5 million. The Breezer was under $500,000. We're pretty confident somebody will like the vintage streetcars, but we don't know because we haven't gone through the process of asking. But again, here's some examples. Seattle, Portland, DC, a lot of other places are doing these modern streetcars as well. Yes, sir.
We don't like that. These can run with along the track electric, too. They don't necessarily need, correct?
We don't have examples of induction, but induction power is possible, so it's about the idea.
Meaning the same type of streetcar, but with the induction.
You just, instead of investing in the overhead catenary, you're digging in and such training with it. And then there's a battery pack for the times that you might have an interruption in the electric. Yeah, Bombard Game makes those cars and they are used extensively overseas.
Are the costs about the same as the more expensive? Slightly more expensive, okay.
I'm hearing lots of options, which sounds like they're very expensive based on our budget, and a lot of bad news. Did you plug in the good news that Abby Hearn will have an extra rider?
Well, I think extra rider is joining the two that I got on a few weeks ago.
Well, and not to mention, how many birthday parties are going to be celebrated on that streetcar?
We want to do the wedding all over again,
Well,
so.
look, there's anniversary birthday parties for the entire Hearn family. Okay, so.
The 2-year-old was very fond of, oh my gosh, through the whole line. So use your words and use 3 of them. They were, oh my gosh. Other options that we would talk about, including our mobile ticketing as HART goes through part of the Thank You Jeff Regional Fare Box Working Group. The HART Fare Boxes will be smart and modern. And one of the options that we have on this is mobile ticketing, so somebody could buy on the website or through an app, purchase their pass that either scans on a mobile platform, or we can even go old school and have an animated pass, which is sort of the different stuff that they show to the motorman, and the motorman keys it into the use this pass. So there are, someone could go online and see, oh, the streetcar's coming, let me buy the pass here. So
We can put parking meters in there, streetcar, then just use parking.
we'd like to do it faster. We want to be like your Chick-fil-A experience, not your Chick-fil-A experience. Then we also had a request, we've got the map from the previous meeting of where all these places are that folks can buy the various fares. Again, since we weren't looking at backing out fare revenue, we had not had a broader discussion. This board has discussed going to, if funding were to change, if we could accommodate a slight decrease immediately in fare revenue, $80,000, I think we said. We've talked about going to the HART fare structure, so $2 for a day pass as opposed to $2.50. And that opens up, it makes it easier for us to program TDMs, and then we have a conversation of how do we do reciprocal fares, because if folks can get the fare median for the same price, they'll be buying it from the market using it for you, the structure of how that money goes back and forth. Well, I mean, $2 is a lot easier than $2. And then it's just one flat, you have your base fare and then your reduced fare, and it's very easy to handle. And also just more information on the streetcar outlets, there we go. So again, we have spoken with 2 of the free CRAs, and we are okay with the fact that we can do a lot with the streetcar, but what we are getting from the CRAs and the SSDs, pays for the schedule, which is out there now. There is not an endowment. We've discussed that. We've discussed that the price tag for Sirius XM insurance has essentially liquidated the endowment, because the endowment was $6 million, and we, after 12 years, we spent $500,000 a year. And just not painting a grim picture, but saying there is a lot which can be done with streetcar, but that is, CRA's, SSDs, grant funding from HART and fair revenue, historically has been the only thing paying for the operations. Painting on a high note, yeah. But if it's, and Jeff, I believe, might have an update. We had in a meeting with Representative Castor and Mayor Buckhorn, had conversations about, the streetcar stopping at Whiting isn't, I don't want to say it isn't useful, but it could be a lot more useful for folks getting around. And what would we do if the streetcar were to run from Whiting up to Marion? So we've gone out through the RFP process to get a consultant to do a study on how to connect from Whiting up to Marion. Do you go up Marion Transitway? Do you go up Ashley? What do you do? And we are close to award on that, Jeff?
Friday.
So we're making the award Friday, so then we'll be able to come back to you and let you know how that study's going and come up with some ideas.
Any questions?
I have a couple questions. The HART at City Hall, the location, that's the one that's going to be next to the old one right there at the police station.
Yeah, the hardware function, which has been moved, yes.
Okay. I was just wondering, I didn't see it at City Hall, I was just wondering.
It moved,
For a minute,
I've been here for 3 weeks.
It moved to
It's been there for 3 weeks.
Yes, sir. Mondays and Fridays.
Monday through Friday. But that's the one that's next to the Holy Hall, right?
Mondays and Fridays.
Mondays and Fridays. But that's the one that's next to the Holy Hall.
It was next to Holy Times.
Where's it at?
In its new, in the City Hall Annex.
Oh, it's in the annex.
Front desk inside.
7th Street.
Well, again,
I
I
go
go
and
to work every
see it.
day and I see it, and some people occasionally drop.
I saw they had a new vending machine in City Hall, and I didn't think it was for her ticket, so.
Yes, sir.
I don't work in the same building. You work in there. I go there once in a while, when I'm invited by Bob to his
You
palatial.
see the building that you work in, or the one that I?
The one you work in, I know you never left to that other building. The other question is that, we talked about, when we've had conversations with awards supposed to be coming out now. Have they already been awarded? The ones that were April applications haven't been awarded yet, right?
September.
Actually, it's pretty
Well, we have more time to drink September, Jeff says.
September, okay. So next year, for the next round of Tiger grants, can this be part of our ask for Tiger grants, meaning that we make Marion Street, including multimodal, including those facilities that would connect our current streetcar to Marion Transit Street?
Imagine we can ask for anything, I'm not aware there's any constraint, and Jeff is,
Well, and I'm thinking about it,
Yeah.
kind of what we had talked about with our lobbyists and with some other folks from the HART side, which is that those projects that are going up in Tampa Heights really need that transportation component. And because they're not, the ground has not been turned over yet to start it, this may be the best time to put a streetcar bid in, especially that we have a congresswoman that's really supportive of it. We have an administration that is very supportive of this congresswoman and our mayor. It may be the best time to kind of have those conversations. But I think that that's a conversation we have to start now and be in contact with the mayor and the mayor's office. But yes, you threw me under the bus a few minutes ago, and I got to throw you under. But we can have those conversations to prepare our Tiger grant application that will go hand in hand with the HUD grant applications that will be coming up next year on the ladders of opportunities, so we can kind of put them all together, hopefully.
You're talking about extending the streetcar?
I'm talking about extending the street.
That's wonderful, and I think that capital money for an extension is a whole lot easier to come by than an operating money. So if we had an operating plan that was substantially bigger, you'd be a whole lot further along, you're going to add a little bit more to it to pay for the operation. And Kathy can get the money if we can figure out the operation.
Well, and that is exactly true, but because we're looking at building, that CRA is getting reactivated. There's a CRA in that area too. So there are dollars that can be, it'll be a long term, okay? Because the city would have to invest first for us to get those monies back. But it will only enhance the tax base at some point if we start planning for it now. The capital, and that's my whole point, which is the capital dollars are the most important at this point, because people won't be moving in until probably, and really be vibrant community until about 5 years from now. It's gonna take us that long, not only to get the money, but to start doing building and everything else, and it can all kind of dovetail with each other. You know, at least that's my thoughts. You know. Now, Jeff, what are your thoughts?
We have a plan. Depending obviously on the outcome of our current Tiger Grant application, it was always our intent that if this would be a first go around, we wanted to have this new study done based on a potential extension of the Marion Transit Way. So for next year's application process, we can take that study, we can marry it with our original application that we have now, do all the improvements, both for the streetcar and the transit way as a transit corridor for wheel buses, and be able to have a comprehensive new Tiger Grant application for next year with everything combined. And by that time, doing the study now for the extension, we'll be able to have true operating costs nailed down by the time the Tiger Grant application is due next year. So we do have a strategy.
Okay, great.
And true operating costs would include anything we want to talk about with fleet, and if the fleet gets bigger or more modern, it obviously does not fit downstairs. So there will have to be some ideas of an expansion of the facility, maybe even just, acquiring a parking lot across the street. But people who do this all the time will be looking at this as opposed to those of us who talk to people who do this all the time. So we have some good opportunities.
Bob's the one that wants to see the parking lot across the street.
What in greater detail, Kevin, thank you. Your presentations of CRA advisory groups were very well received. What amount of detail do we need to have staff provide to move it forward for when we do want to make an ask for funds, whether it be private or public?
Well, my recommendation is that we adopt the budget which was proposed, which is the $1.5 million, I guess, and work our way through what happens with channel side wall, find out if we're successful in getting money, find out what the timing requirement is. So a lot of this is dependent on how quickly the channel side wall situation works its way out. Then we have that conversation about, because we make assumptions on operating hours. They might not be reflective of what the people at channel side wall would think would be best. So we have that conversation. Then we have a budget that we can go back to the various CRAs with. In the meanwhile, the CRAs will adopt their budgets. And when we have a final idea about numbers, then we'll go back to City Council with modifications to those CRA budgets. My assumption is that this will probably take 60 days to plan.
So we'll adopt the budget with the city's $148,000.
With the assumption, would be.
Well, otherwise we have to cut service, and that's very scary to have to even talk about it, doing that.
Well, again, out of deference to the city's CFO, she's uncomfortable talking about plugging the hole because this budget has not been presented to City Council. It has not been formally adopted by the mayor, and so I'm talking about school building.
No, I understand, and we don't have to adopt our budget until next month.
Yeah, so I would wait. I would wait to make sure that all of this comes to pass, that there's no last minute things that have to happen.
We have historically, the THS Board has not adopted the final budget until after the City of Tampa and HART have adopted their budget. And
That's correct.
as inconvenient as it may have been in previous years, this board has adopted budgets retroactively, so in October or November of the fiscal year. So we definitely, from a staff perspective, we would be waiting for the city budget to go forward.
Okay, good. No problem. Okay, good. CSX, we talked a little bit about, you're trying to, did you want to say anything specific about your lobbyists?
We wanted to get some feedback from the board on where to go. HART does have a lobbyist, a state lobbyist who was the advocacy group, and they had taken the recommendations from THS Board up to Tallahassee this year. And the feedback again that we got was we were too late in the budget cycle to ask FDOT to buy a crossing or do anything significant. And the Secretary's office was willing to talk to representatives from the THS Board about, which we would like to include the lobbyists too, to say what is it that we're trying to achieve, what is it about, and help them understand what the issue is. In early June, Jeff and I had a phone call with the Secretary's office, And we didn't call them complaining, which I think surprised them, but we did advise them that we'd be back in touch about this issue. So we said, hey, here's Tampa, here's all the cool stuff we're doing in Hillsborough County, brag, we're great, we're wonderful. By the way, we have this tiny little issue we think you could help with. Some of the strategies that our lobbies had recommended we discuss were, if this doesn't get the sunrail treatment, if FDOT is not willing to come in and buy that intersection, which is what they had done for sunrail, would the board be comfortable asking FDOT to defray part of the cost of insurance? Would it be appropriate for the board to say, we know people, not any council people sitting at the table, of course, but we know elected officials who have connections with members of the state legislature, to be visiting the state delegation and see if there's support from this, if we can generate some support in Tallahassee, or a proposal of asking FDOT to pick up part of the cost of insurance. If the cost of the intersection is $15 million, I'm making it up, it might be more cost effective for them to pay half the cost of the insurance for 60 years. So what are the options this board would like us to take forward to start discussing with the Secretary's office? And would this board like to have representation going with HART staff to talk to members of our representation to see what they're willing to stake out in Tallahassee? So that's where we are.
Well, at this point, until this year, we paid. This board had control of a fund which covered the cost. That's no longer the case. So it's no longer just our problem. It's really the city's problem. And by inference, it's HART's problem, since you all put in the system. So I would think we would be happy to help you do anything you or the city or you the city together want to do or can do. Because you've now inherited the problem because we zeroed out our bank account. Am I missing something here?
No, in fact, what the sad part is, Mike, is that with that $6 million, we could have built a bridge over the dam thing.
We asked URS to look at the time, and they thought we could build a bridge for $3.5 million, so we said, that's outrageous.
Yeah. And as we laugh about it now, we probably should have built a bridge.
Or a tunnel or something.
Yeah. So, no, I agree with that. I think that what we need to discuss with DOT is how can we, obviously the administration, the Scott administration has put in money for onboard Florida for quiet zones and some other things, or some other dollars that they put in order to make that a success. All we should do is ask them to help us become as successful as any other entity that's out there, and to say, we're not asking for a huge amount. All we want to do is take this responsibility off of our hands. And if it means that they buy in some strange way, buy the crossing itself to take sovereign control of that, maybe that's what we need to do, and allow us to cross over their crossing. I'm not sure how you do that, but maybe that's what we need to do. It's something that instead of it's not a cost to them per se, but it is an ownership to them. And I'm sure that CSX and all their dealings with the state must have some way that they can do something like this.
Well, and I believe that was the recommendation that we had taken forward, was to have FDOT go ahead and buy the internet. And they didn't say no, they didn't say you guys are crazy, they said it's way too late in the session out of this conversation. So it sounds like start with that and see if there's supposed to be able to tailor from there.
Yes, you are wise to have chosen to start thinking about this now, because when we get to the end of the year, the winter will be too late. The district secretary, I don't know if he even knows about the problem, that Deputy Hunt does, his deputy, but I would think that the mayor of the city can have the leverage to have that conversation. I think HART has that leverage, and I think you have to go through District 7 to get to the state secretary. Now, the staff out there has been watching, Alma Lopez and all those folks have been watching the Streetcar since it started. It was in the planning stage like 20 years ago. And they are fully aware of the right of way, and they're fully aware that they've never done anything out. And they're mildly apologetic about it, but there's never been nothing's ever bubbled through the system to find a solution. So, we can help us figure out how to do that.
Well, if we don't ask you, then the answer is no, so we'll start the conversation.
we have talked about the CRA meetings, they went well. You know, we didn't, and Bob, just so you know, we didn't really get into numbers. We just talked about where we were and where we're trying to be in our budget. And I think they understood. They didn't want to get into the numbers and even agree, so we'll be happy to go back and talk to them at any point in time. Is there anything else we need to discuss? If not, Kevin, thank you very much. This has been very helpful. So we'll have a board meeting next month, and we'll talk about the budget again, we'll have another marketing board meeting, and follow up the things that we didn't get. So thank you very much for your time today. Very much for thank you, Catherine. Thank you, our staff, for being